Let's be innovative. Let's challenge a norm. Let's raise the bar. Let's be the elite.
Lionheart returns debuting its new championship format. For the first time, Lionheart's best will battle in a multi-class format featuring BMW's all-new M Hybrid V8 and M4 GT3 machines. 55 drivers will face off in the ultimate test in the ultimate driving machine. 18 races at the world's most demanding road courses where traffic takes on a whole new meaning. This year, Lionheart will crown 2 champions, whose name will be etched into the Lionheart history books. Find out next. The Buckinger Sportscar Championship, presented by BMW Performance Driving School, starts now. The Butt-Kicker Sports Car Series makes its way to a crown jewel of motorsport. For over 100 years, drivers and teams and manufacturers have made their way into the French countryside, into a small town to challenge machine against the clock. But with ever-increasing reliability, it has become a battle down the Mulsanne and through corners that have been iconic. To win here is always special. To win tonight under the nightlight in Lionheart's first trip to the hallowed grounds, history-making. Welcome to the Circuit de la Sarthe. Welcome to the BMW Performance Center Grand Prix of Le Mans. Hello everyone and welcome back to RaceSpotTV and coverage of the 2023 Butt-Kicker Sports Car Series. My name is Arjuna Kankipati, delighted to have your company once again. I'm joined as ever by Andrew Kinsella. Don't forget you can follow along with live timing and scoring by heading to RaceSpot.tv/timing. Let's head straight in towards our BMW Performance Driving School pre-show because drivers are out there and under the nightlights for qualifying, and boy, Andrew, has there been a date circled on this calendar for a while. We'll take a look at the next level racing schedule. 5 rounds already in the books. We head into the 6th round at maybe one of the most famous tracks in the world.
Arjuna, we might not be doing 24 hours here at Le Mans tonight, but we are at this iconic track for this type of cars. There is nothing else, no other circuit on the planet that screams sports car racing other than the Circuit de la Sarthe that we're at here tonight. But looking ahead, we've got some fantastic action coming at you in July as well with Fuji and Mosport. That's going to be 2 very different and very tricky tracks for these cars. And then the big one for me is that first week in Monza of August in Monza. That one's going to be very, very interesting to watch. Lots of hectic action there for sure.
And that leads us to the end of the first half of the season, where we'll have a pretty good sense of how the championship is going to be shaking out. And then, of course, look at that back half of the campaign. Brings us into 2024. Cannot wait to finish under the night lights at Daytona. Two tracks where there is plenty now of heritage being shared amongst them. Speaking of championships, here's a look at the BMW Performance Driving School standing, starting with your LMDHs, where currently, it is Hydro Race Geodesic Racing 1 and 2, with Austin Young still leading, 19 points clear of John Badafer, but look how close it sits behind. Valiokas for Race Clutch, 1 point adrift to Badafer, 2 points further back. Phil Krause in the private label team Hype Machine, and then Graham Sanders starting to pick up some momentum. That's just your top 5. Boy, Andrew, has this been an electric class so far, as we bring this brand new BMW car into Lionheart competition, a BMW M Hybrid V8 that has just come off a successful weekend at Watkins Glen.
The big story of this championship so far is undoubtedly how wide open this championship has been so far. You even look at Graham Saunders, maybe not necessarily performing the way he's hoped in every race, but man, he's shown some speed as well, so I wouldn't count him out. And then there's sort of the Lionheart regulars like Caleb Bensi, Alex Gouillon. They're sitting back a little bit further back. But you look at the 10th place driver, Alex Van de Sant, a veteran of the IndyCar series. He's had no luck this year. And not shown here is Adam Blocker, who has missed a couple of races due to his real-world commitments. So we've got a number of different names here that can mix it up in this field here tonight.
Absolutely, and that's just one of our 2 classes. Let's go take a look at the GT3 standings, again courtesy of the BMW Performance Driving School. Sean Campbell leads not just in the Pro Championship, but I'll also point out, while they're out there on track for qualifying, he's in our YouTube chat right now. That is a man that can multitask, and that's why perfect, flawless so far. And I'm guessing, given the margin that he had in practice, almost 2 seconds clear of the rest of the field, that will continue to hold true. But Ryan Otis, Josh Chin continue to be locked in what is a really fun little tussle. They've got to watch out, though, not just for Matthew Morhart, who's been consistent in holding the station down for the Synergy Motorsports gang, but Hydro Race Geodesic Racing, not just Miguel Vigo, but Carlos Villa as well in the points, starting to shake things up, Andrew.
Absolutely. The leader of Sean Campbell has really sort of solidified his hold so far, and you mentioned his pace in practice here tonight, but man, there's a lot to play for in this class. But look at the AM Championship as well, Arjuna. Chase Wilson, he's been doing a really good job. We've said a number of times that he's sort of been showing the way for the AM class and maybe deserves to be moved up to Pro class sooner rather than later. But look at the likes of James Paulson, Chris Staples, Trevor Malone, Chris Reagan. They are all fighting for that championship there. And the cool thing about the AM Championship, we've talked about this so many times, just one bad result and suddenly everything gets turned on its head, because both the Pro and the AM Championship, they're all fighting for the same points here.
Yep, so that's the look through your AM Championship then. But when we talk about the championships for the drivers, they're combined across the team championship, specifically with the GT3s. LMDH, we mentioned Hydro Race Geodesic Racing, they're looking very strong, of course, at the front there. Synergy Laval Motorsports, not necessarily a team we would have expected to be up there in second, but they are in front of Powerslide Motorsports, showing just how crazy that class has been. Synergy Motorsports, courtesy of not just Ryan Otis, but Matthew Morhart, running away in the GT3 Championship. WMP Racing is Sean Campbell by himself, sat in second. Question is, who behind third on back is really going to be able to get in front?
Absolutely. There's a lot to play for in both of these classes, sort of further down, even looking at further down on the LMDH side. You look at the Graphics LC and the Race Clutch. There's going to be a lot of fighting throughout these fields, and I think the interesting thing is seeing just how strong some of these single car teams are in comparison to some of the 2-car teams as well. It produces some really intriguing results here.
Take a look at our Gomez Sim Industry Series details in this debut season of the Butt Kicker Sports Car Series, but in the 10th year of Lionheart Racing Series competition. We have 2 ultimate driving machines, the M Hybrid V8 and the GT3, split up into our 2-car classes, and everyone fights with a custom-fit setup built by the Majors Garage. They're fighting for their share of $18,000 in cash and prizes, with our LMDH and GT3 champion walking away with a BMW M4 GT4 driving experience at the BMW Performance Driving School in Thermal, California. 90-minute time races across the board. Live race control with the threat, I would say, of safety cars, but maybe not here today. Never say never, though, under the night lights. Arena track analysis as we make our way into Le Mans for the very first time, a track where you spend about 85% of the time at full throttle. Fuel margins are going to be relatively tight, and especially given that drivers are still trying to get to grips with the updates that these cars have got, it's going to be interesting to see just how they'll work through their 8 and 9 lap fuel windows respectively. Pit delta anywhere from 20 to 25 seconds. And Andrew, as we look up above at the 8.5 odd miles, 13.5 odd kilometers through the French countryside, we don't see the KFCs, we don't see all the grandstands where spectators adorn this amazing facility. Instead, what we see is the almost 2-kilometer blast down the Mulsanne, and then that slowest part of the corner right down at the bottom.
Absolutely. This is an iconic track here. You even look at the Porsche curves, the Dunlop curves, Tetra Rouge up at the top of the Mulsanne Straight, Indianapolis, the hard 90-degree right left-hander right into the right-hander as well, immediately following it. There's so many iconic corners, and you have to nail each and every one of them in order to put a lap together here. And there's so many small areas that you just lose a 10th here and a 10th there, and suddenly you find yourself 2 seconds down on the GT3 class leader, who will likely be Sean Campbell.
Momentum so important here, and we're going to see that even though draft can play a factor, it is not the be-all and the end-all. With the drivers out there in qualifying, it's time to thank those that bring you this coverage, starting with HyperX. The Lionheart Racing Series is powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperx.com. You're passionate about sim racing, but it always feels a little flat compared to the feeling of driving a real car. Now you can actually feel what it's like to drive a race car. Butt kicker haptic hardware and software are easy to install and let you feel every bump in the track, slip of your tire, and engine redline. The tactile feedback is so accurate and realistic, you'll be driving faster and having more fun than ever before. Visit thebuttkicker.com to learn more. If you think sim racing is thrilling, try getting behind the wheel of a real race car. The BMW M4 GT4 experience at the BMW Performance Driving School in Thermal, California puts you in the cockpit of one of BMW's fastest cars, complete with roll cage and racing slicks. You'll get fitted with a racing suit, practice pit stops, and lap their track with pro instructors. Nothing virtual about their thrills. To book your M4 GT4 experience, call or visit the links on screen. Next Level Racing is an industry-leading cockpit and motion simulator manufacturer devoted to creating the most immersive experience possible for the global sim racing community. Take your racing to the next level and visit nextlevelracing.com. Gomez Sim Industries are makers of high-end esports equipment and controls, precision-built using nothing but the best materials available today. Passion and handmade craftsmanship drive each made-to-order build, creating a driving experience like no other. Visit GomezSimIndustries.com. Arena is an all-new esports streaming experience driven by real-time interactions between gamers and their communities. Arena brings live broadcast fan engagement to the next level. Get involved and make a difference on arena.tv. From simple logos to full branding for your company, virtual designs deliveries raced by Indy 500 champions. Graphics offers the finest quality with a wide range of design services. Visit graphicsesports.com. Qualifying at Le Mans might not sound that important, but given how stretched out the field can become on the opening lap of the race, Andrew, I would argue it is more important than people would maybe understand. The one thing that we are guaranteed, though, is traffic is not likely to be a factor at any stage for any of our LMP, GTP or GT3 contenders within the opening laps, because with such a long lap, it's going to take a while for them to streak around the entirety of the facility.
Yeah, we will have a slight reprieve from talking our incessant talk about traffic, but it will play a factor at some point in this race. There are obviously very long portions of this track where you can get by slower cars easily, but then there are also those portions where it's almost impossible to pass, and you can lose 1.5 seconds on a lap easily just if you catch them at the wrong points in time. So traffic will be a factor, just not right at the beginning of the race, as you say.
So Austin Young currently on pole position in his championship leading number 11. Gets very loose out of the final corner, but hopefully not going to compromise him too much as he works his way to the line to begin a lap here at the Circuit de la Sarthe. Right on board with our championship leader as he works through turn 1. Watch as he sets up on the left, just trying to carry as much of the momentum and use as much of the track as possible. But up here, you got to be careful. Some of those anti-cut curbs can damage the car. You got to be careful not to pick up a slowdown as well. Fire it down the hill. The scene of LMP drama in previous occasions with multi-class traffic. Austin Young, temporary internet glitch, but this is maybe one of the most important corners on the track. Out of Tetra Rouge, a very slight blip of the throttle, and then back onto it, powering with hybrid down the Mulsanne into that first chicane.
And it's so important to get Tetra Rouge right, because it sets you up for this long straightaway, and you can see that these LMDHs are using every bit of the gear range that they can, all the way up into 7th gear, right at the top of the range as you come down into the first chicane here. Hard braking. Quickly left or quickly right, then back left, and then this is another one. You have to make sure that your exits are just so precise as you come through here, and you're maximizing the speed down these long straightaways.
One thing that we don't necessarily have to watch too much of is these cars straddling the middle of the track. That's maybe something more of a thought for the GT3s, but Austin Young back onto the right-hand side into that second chicane where you can actually carry a bit more speed initially, but I think he overcooked it and has to really compromise the second part of that chicane and the exit to be able to avoid any sort of slowdown. Chin, by the way, is up to second in the GT3s, but no real change so far in the LMDH. We head down into what I think is actually one of the more understatedly tricky corners, the Mulsanne corner, end of all the momentum, down through all the gears, except Austin Young sticking in second just to hold a little bit more traction as he rides his way all the way over the curb to get back onto the throttle and down this another short run in towards what is the slowest part of the track.
One last final blast down this straightaway, and then it comes to Indianapolis, and this is another corner where you really have to be so precise. You're doing a quick right here just before in, and then hard on the brakes almost as soon as you come straight away, and then you have to nail that corner. You can see Austin Young using every bit of road here. And this is another very slow corner all the way down into 2nd gear, and then right out to the side again. Austin Young is using every inch of this track on his qualifying run here.
Has another little bit of internet drama there as Valiokas jumps half a tenth in front over 8.5 miles. Think about how close they are split. That is incredible. Into the Porsche curves where you need commitment again. Just a blip of the throttle. A half lift. Betafer, Young's teammate, will go to the top, and now even more commitment required. 7/10 the margin. Slightly loose through the first part of the right-hander before you sweep into that very final section. A couple more chicanes still left to run for our championship leader, and boys, the car look like it's a handful, and he's going to run out of time as well. Time the enemy for some here at Le Mans.
What a lap that was shaping up to be for Young, but he just doesn't quite get it ahead of time. Now we've got a quick little grid here, Arjuna, so I'm going to throw it right back to you.
We've got a couple of moments before they go racing here at the Circuit de la Sarthe for the very first time in Lionheart history. Let's run you down through your butt kicker starting grid. It is a Hydra Race Geodesic Racing 1 and 2, but this time it's John Betafer that will lead us to the green with Graham Saunders alongside. Valiokas will try and challenge the contingent, but he's got the championship leading Hydra Race Geodesic machine to his outside. Phil Kraus and Adam Blocker will line up on row number 3, the Lionheart Open Wheel Series rivals, with Kraus coming off a victory just yesterday. Flynn Lazier, Michael O'Brien, 7th and 8th positions, with Guyon and David Sirois, the Synergy Lavoie Motorsports team that have combined to get 2nd in the HyperX Team Championship, up inside of the top 10. It's Bensi who's got some work to do from 11th, as does Van der Sant, the first car with no time on the board. Rasmus, Taylor and Graf, other machines that will roll with no times recorded next to their name. Just 15 of the LMDHs, slightly more of the GT3. Sean Campbell, Joshua Chin, your front row, with Matthew Morhart, the first in the Synergy Motorsports car. He'll have Miguel Vigo and then Carlos Villa and Ryan Otis alongside him for the rest of the top 6. Back in 7th, there will be Brian Bennett. He's got Christopher Hill for company in the 101. Nate Siefker and then Clint Martin, 9th and 10th positions, with Callisto and Wilson 11th and 12th. Note Martin ahead of Wilson. The AM class may be in for a bit of a mix-up once again. Jimbo Pfeiffer, Chris Staples 13th and 14th, with Marquez, Herrick, Jaegerlainer and Carter, 17th and 18th. The AMs and the pros very much getting mixed up as we work our way through the GT3s. It's Reagan, Malone, Spath, Staropoli, and Forsyth, the rest of the 23-car grid. They are rolling their way down in towards the Porsche curve. So the wonderful thing about actually having a bit more time to talk is we can grab you through very quickly our featured onboard cameras for today's 90-minute outing. We start with the GT3s, where we jump on board with second place in the championship, Ryan Otis. He carries with him the BMW Performance Driving School. Drive on the edge of physics and experience the ultimate rush. Visit BMW Performance Driving Center.com. Also carrying in the GT3 class, one of our featured onboard cameras, it's the New York native of Andrew Marquez. Sim racing is better with ButtKicker. Visit thebuttkicker.com. Up front, in towards the LMDH field, we ride on board with Matt Taylor and HyperX. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers, and HyperX is always ready to game. And of course, our championship leader carries with him Gomez Sim Industries. Makers of high-end esports equipment and controls, visit GomezSimIndustries.com. Looks like Logan Spath is going to be starting on pit lane, but the rest of the cars heading in towards that final chicane and in towards the starting zone. Andrew, some expectations as we make some more Lionheart history here today.
I think this is going to be a chaotic first lap, especially all the way through Tetra Rouge here, Arjuna. This is not only the first time that we're going to Le Mans in this car, this is also the first time that we're starting in the dark with the headlights. So this is a new experience all around for all of these drivers, and I expect a little bit of chaos here on the first half of this opening lap.
I think I can hear the flyover. I'm not really sure if we're going to see much of it. You can just about see it as the sun continues to set. Competition, commitment, excitement. This is Lionheart, and we have landed at the Circuit de la Sarthe. They will get themselves single filed out before they enter in towards the starting zone, so ignore the green flag going off. The cameras flash as they M-Hybrid V8 stack up side by side. Field left in control of the Hydra Race Geodesic Racing team, and John Badefer will hold them for a while to get us going for the BMW Performance Center Grand Prix of Le Mans. Through turn number one, they will storm, and it's a heavy braking zone. Side by side for second on back, but your race leader able to streak away and over the crest of turn number two. Nice tidy start for all 15 of the LMDHs, but now they'll streak towards what is potentially the most important corner on the track as they work towards Tetra Rouge. Sean Campbell will lead the GTD cars up towards turn number one as well. Nice tidy start for them. Who's going to get the best run though? Onto the Mulsanne straight.
Oh, but we have a GT3 car backwards, Arjuna, and he comes back into the track. There's a big blockage there in that first chicane.
Brian Bennett, Jägerlaner, I see mixed up in that, and the yellow flag's going to fly. Not surprising given the level of chaos that he has brought. I do think that the GTP car is going to be slightly surprised, and now we have long caution laps with which we will have to fill some time. I think Jimbo Pfeiffer, the last of the cars that recovers, but it was Brian Bennett, I think, that was around that really instigated the moment of madness, and we'll have to cycle back and take a look at all of that. Andrew, talk us through what you initially will see here.
Yeah, it looked like just coming through the right-hander there before the braking zone, one of the GT3 drivers, I think it was Bennett, just checked up a little bit. The car behind him got into him, spun him around, and then unfortunately with the new service model, he didn't get very much help with the slowing down there. In fact, it wasn't actually back to front. It was side to side contact, and then right back across, and about 3 or 4 drivers just with nowhere to go.
Yeah, I'm not sure there was really much that many could be doing in that situation, and so avoiding action was taken by some, but I don't think much that many could have done in that situation. So now we're going to have to work our way back to the line to pick up the pace car, so it's going to take us a while to do that. We'll spool up a couple more looks at the replay in the meanwhile, but the one thing that this does solve, Andrew, is a concern that I had kind of raised with you before we went racing, is that at least in this LMDH class where 9-lap windows are expected, that's not much further than 30 minutes, and we're talking about a 90-minute race where you also then will likely have to finish the lap that you're on. Fuel mileage was going to be a concern, maybe not so much now.
Yeah, this will be a reprieve for all the LMDH drivers who are maybe just a little bit nervous about having to go one extra lap on one of these stints, but I think that at this point they should be good to go full out, especially if you're one of the drivers in the draft. You should be able to save enough fuel, but it definitely still will mean that some drivers might have to save just a little bit. It depends on when we actually get back to green here. Oh, as we see an LMDH driver, he just went off Indianapolis. Was that Tyler Groff?
I think it's Michael O'Brien in the 145, so shows that that's a tricky corner even when we have slowed ourselves down. It's a long way to go before we will have picked up the pace car. Why don't we try and take a look on board with Chase Wilson, who was mixed up in that one, and our AM Championship leader I don't necessarily think is going to be unable to avoid a trip down towards pit lane. I mean, just run out, excuse me, this was Lionel Kalisto's onboard view, but just run out of space and places to go.
Yeah, just nothing you can do at that point. You just hope that the car doesn't pinball into you, and unfortunately, Kalisto did get a fairly big portion of that. You can see again, it was just maybe a little bit of netcode contact, maybe a little bit of side-to-side contact, but then the real problem was that there was just nothing that Bennett could do to slow that car down, and he just speared right into the meat of the field there.
So just to confirm, all the cars that were mixed up in that, Brian Bennett initially, then Chris Staples, Chase Wilson, Lionel Kalisto, Jimbo Pfeiffer, Eric Staropoli, Travis Jagerlainer. I think those are the names. Clint Martin also did have to head down towards the pit lane, but as we head towards the pace car, Mike Rasmussen and Matt Taylor will dive to pit lane. I think this is a strategic call just to top off on fuel, and I think given the topic that we were just discussing, I don't necessarily think this is the worst thing in the world, although they may end up cycled in behind some of the GT3 machines, in which case that might end up being rather painful. So they will want to very much, make sure that is not a concern. You spotted Michael O'Brien off in the background. Now, what actually happened to him?
I think O'Brien was just...
oh, curb!
Oh, yeah, there was a little bit of a curb there, and that can so easily happen with these cars. Because of the long straightaways here, there's very little downforce on these cars, and if you get onto the painted curbs here, it can just spin you right around, particularly when the car's just a little bit unsettled, like O'Brien was there.
That wasn't what it was. Just listen in for a second here, Andrew. Let me make sure we're not going to go too far back in time. Someone had the clutch in, and I forgot that if he was down the gears, because he used the clutch to save some fuel, but then went down the gears before he put the clutch back in, which meant that his engine was spinning too high for the gear that he was in. And yes, traction loss inevitable.
Yeah, that is definitely a mistake that can happen when you're saving fuel like that. I've done it myself, and it's just painful when it happens because you know there's no one to blame but yourself in that situation. But it certainly will have woken up Michael O'Brien and put him on full alert for this restart.
If you were wondering where Matt Taylor... Mike Rasmussen and Matt Taylor have ended up. They have ended up in the GTD back, but surprisingly have been immediately cleared on through to rejoin the tail end of the prototype class. Like I mentioned, a BMW M Hybrid V8 that now has its first official victory, Andrew. It wasn't without some semblance of controversy, but in the Sailing 6 Hours of the Glen this past weekend, the Porsche 963 that won the race at the line, disqualified in post-race technical inspection for a 1 millimeter worn down skid plank beyond regulation, and so BMW Team RLL have their first victory in about 3 and a bit years.
And this is not the first time that something like that has happened. I remember in the IndyCar series, James Hinchcliffe at Texas had a win taken away, or a second place taken away, I believe it was, for running too low as well. So it's one of those things where every engineer tries to gain as much advantage as he can, but you can't run the car too low, and those plates on the bottom of the cars ensure that, and the Porsche car just ran afoul of that rule. So as much as the fans of that team wish that it hadn't happened, there's very little to dispute there. I
mean, did you watch much of the race, Andrew? I must ask first.
I did not know.
Okay, so the one thing that I'm going to give as a counterpoint is that I don't recall it ever being like this in previous years in the real world, but on the inside, on the run to the bus stop, cars were kicking up sparks. Like, I don't know what was going on, but like, it was like there was a crest on the right side of the road and not the left. And so I just wonder if that had something to do with it. And I'm just saying, 1 millimeter is a very different sort of a thing to what happened earlier this year with the Daytona 24 victory that was not taken away. And so, yeah, I just think it's harsh. I don't know. Rules are rules. I agree with that.
Keep in mind that you say it was 1 millimeter, but it was 1 millimeter too much wear. So they had a cushion of plank that they could wear through before it became too much. And so they just ran it just that much too low. And I hear what you're saying about the bumps there, but at the same time, the drivers did have practice. The engineers would have seen what type of wear that they were getting. It's just that one particular team pushed it further than the other ones, and that team happened to get an advantage that let them win because of it.
How do we know it was an advantage? I'm just playing devil's advocate here for the sake of playing devil's advocate.
Well, because of how the bottom side of these cars work, there is a fair amount of downforce that gets created. So the closer that you can run and the better that you can seal off the Venturi tunnels underneath the car, it's definitely going to create an advantage. And particularly at a track like Watkins Glen, where you have a lot of medium to high speed corners with a lot of G-forces, where you want the car as low as possible with as much downforce as possible. I think, in fact, there's probably very few tracks where that could be more advantageous to run it as low as possible as Watkins Glen.
I do wonder actually because different LMDH cars work very differently, right? Because you're allowed, one end of the car is allowed to be adjusted. And so for the BMW, that's the rear. So that's, you've got some basic rear wing settings, but you don't have much customization of front downforce. Peugeot decided that, okay, we're just going to go with no rear wing whatsoever, and so they have some customization at the front. That's an interesting point. I never thought about it like that. What we do know is, I think we are going to have one more lap of pacing, although we will not know until we get into that final sector, because of how the iRacing pace lights work.
I believe Race Control did say that we have to go around one more time here. So just to build on what you were saying with that adjustability, that's another consideration for the engineers of this car, because obviously from an aero perspective, the easiest way for us viewers to see what these drivers are doing and what these engineers are doing is with things like the wings. But at the same time, rake is very important to the aero sensitivity and the balance of the car. So it could be that the way that the Porsche was set up had the rear of the car running really low in order to induce a little bit of extra understeer in the car. So that is another thing that can happen with the way that they orientate the car and the setup.
Just to confirm, Andrew did say that Race Control said that we are likely going to have to do one more lap, and so that means another lap under pace car. Sean Campbell, who's back in our YouTube chat, will likely have some thoughts about that. What it also means on the restart, and Andrew, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but because the green flag's going to fly with still most of the field yet to come through the chicane, we've got 37 cars in the field, it's going to be an interesting restart the further back in line you are.
Yeah, and the other thing that I'll be watching here is just how much space the GT3s and the LMDHs are going to put between each other, because we've talked about this a number of times before, Arjuna. The LMDHs definitely have the straight line advantage, but under braking, the GT3s, if anything, are a little bit better than the LMDHs are. So if the LMDHs are too close to the GT3s, there could be some more carnage here.
I don't know if we enforce a class split, although there is a gap being left. Phil Kraus is also in my DMs, by the way. Joshua Chins complaining as well. I don't think too many people are too happy about having to do another lap. But again, this is iRacing Enforced. There's not much that we're going to be able to do. Someone has pointed out quite correctly, Why does the pace car have have no headlights on, but it does have the lights above on?
I think it's just the well, the lights will come on regardless of time. Like the light bar will come on to signify whether there's one lap to go or not. So we should probably see the lights go out as it crosses the line to indicate that it will not be coming on. I don't know why the headlights aren't working though.
Okay, the headlights are just, you know, that's a ticket sent to iRacing to support. Now, I think we'll get a sense of what lap times under caution are here, but this is the true Le Mans experience, if anyone was wondering, especially with the new safety car procedure that they introduced this year. Surely you come into pit lane? No? Was that a fake? It was a fake from a few. I'm going to stay out there and I think stretch this out just a lap long, although one has elected to bail. In fact, it seems from 9th on back they've come down to pit lane. Bensi, Sirois, Graf, O'Brien and Razmas will make their way down. But now we do get the lights off. We've got 9 minutes and 30 seconds to go before we go racing again, or so.
It's a long way back, and I like this call from some of these drivers to come down, because if they can maybe save just one lap here, they might just be able to cut out a stop now. Because as you say, it's going to be about an hour and 6 minutes to go. So that's, if they can extend one lap per stint here, they could maybe do it on 2 stints. So it's going to be close.
Well, under caution here in the BMW Performance Center Grand Prix of Le Mans. Didn't even get through the opening sector for the GT3 machines, but there are some split strategy calls as drivers cycle through what will be the opening 30 minutes in effect of the race. Don't go anywhere. We'll take our one ad break here on RaceSpotTV under caution and then go uninterrupted to the checkered flag. The run to the end coming up next here live on RaceSpotTV. Welcome back to RaceSpotTV and to the Circuit de la Sarthe. We are 5 rounds into the Butt Kicker Sportscar Series, and we're live now with the BMW Performance Center Grand Prix of Le Mans under caution after Brian Bennett spun backwards in through the opening corner in the GT3 class. Caution flew as a result of 4 or 5 cars being tangled up. Half the GTP field at the front is elected to come down pit lane. The other half gambling on a slightly different strategy. My name is Arjuna Kankipati alongside with Andrew Kinsella to cover tonight's racing. Don't forget RaceSpot.tv/timing. Follow along with your favorite team and driver. The drivers are hanging in there, the commentators hanging in there, the viewers hanging in there as well. And Andrew, we are about 4 minutes away from going racing once again. And given that we didn't really get much racing under our belt, surely these tires are going to be quite cold through the entirety of the field. It's not just the fact that we're going to be single file restarting through the final sector that's going to be interesting. It's the fact that drivers have got to actually get the tires up to temperature.
Yeah, that's going to be the real challenge for all of these drivers, is you've got to get some temperature in these tires. I'm surprised we're not seeing a little bit more weaving back and forth here just to get whatever you can. A few drivers are doing that, but not as many as I was kind of expecting here, because temperature is going to be very, very important, particularly through the Dunlop curves. It's a very high commitment area of the track, and you really need the tires fired up by the time you get to Tetra Rouge, because you can't afford to have a big braking event through there, particularly when all of the field is going to be so jumbled up at the start of this stint, because again, single file, but also very little separation between the GT3s and the LMDHs. So an incident at the front of the LMDH field could have ramifications throughout the entire both classes here, Arjuna.
Well, I guess it's an obvious point as well, but under night, there's not much sun. There's not much temperature, and so that means when we look at the conditions, not as cool as you can get on iRacing, but it's as near as makes no difference as cool as you're going to get. It's 25 degrees Celsius track temperature, works out to 77 degrees Fahrenheit in those pesky Imperial units. 14 kilometer an hour winds as well, not insignificant. These are, I wouldn't say ideal conditions for a restart, but they're pretty good conditions for racing.
They absolutely are, but I think the thing that will make it the most difficult is that because we're at night here, all of these drivers are going to have so much more limited reference points for braking. You're really going to have to be on top of what the other cars around you are doing, but the brake markers, they're harder to see. There's less going on that you can see around the sides of the racetrack. It's going to be very, very interesting to watch how all these drivers negotiate this.
Of note, it sounds like iRacing needs to be prodded to add a BMW pace car into the mix. Or maybe we have to use that iRacing sedan, which reminds me of a bit of a Ford, a bit of a this and that all mixed in there. It's one of those Franken cars, you know?
Well, I was just going to say that if it was a BMW pace car, then the headlights would work on that one.
Probably. This is the GT3 field, by the way, which has left about a 5-second margin to the GT LMDHs, which I guess means that we will see them start a little bit separately.
And that's probably a good call there, because again, we were talking about it a little bit earlier, the GT3s do have just that little bit better braking capability than the LMDHs, so if you get too close on this restart, then some calamity can ensue. So I think that Race Control and Sean Campbell, your leader, have decided to leave this sort of 5-second gap here.
You can see how big the margin is visually down to the cars heading in towards the Porsche curves. All 38 cars are out there on track, by the way, even those that were mixed up in our Turn 1, Lap 1 drama for the GT3s. Chase Wilson, our AM Championship leader, the one most significantly, I would say, impacted by all of that. Why don't we give you a quick rundown of the classes as they stand with the time that we've got remaining especially. You can see, starting with the GT3s, given they are numerous, at least more numerous than the LMDHs. Only one car a lap down, Clint Martin, who had to tow back to pit lane. Everyone else remains on the leading lap and in the train. Ryan Bennett's lost 13, Clint Martin's lost 13, Chase Wilson's lost 6, Jimbo Pfeiffer's lost 6 as well. And you brought it up when we were talking about points earlier, Andrew. AMs and pros in GT3 fighting on track for the same points.
And right now, Chris Staples and Jim Herrick, your two amateur drivers that are really going to be benefiting from this. Chase Wilson is definitely going to have to do a little bit of a recovery drive over the next hour and change here.
Quick look as well, I guess, at your LMDHs, although that's a little bit more split just by the courtesy of the pit cycle. If we can take a look at it there, yep, you can see basically Caleb Bensi on back, 10th on back, have come down pit lane. Everyone else has yet to make a stop, and by virtue of this long safety car period, I wonder if they're thinking of cutting a pit stop out, or if they're just thinking that they can make it as short as possible. Regardless, pace car pulls off, and hopefully for the final time today, field is left in control of John Baderfer once again as we head off into the starting zone. I think they thought Baderfer was going to get on with it. They got checked up, green flag back out in the air, and now 2, maybe 3 wide as we head up into turn number 1. Who's going to be bravest of them all? Because the geodesic teammates have got to try and work together. Valiokas on the outside will take the inside potentially, but Austin Young, the championship leader, has gone off.
That's really unfortunate there as we see the GT3s are just starting up now. I think that the 2 LMDHs were able to get back going again. That was Austin Young. And who was the second one? I believe it was it Flynn Lazier?
Not sure who it was. We'll grab a look at the replay in a moment. GTD's working their way now through that opening sector, and this time slightly more cleanly through the field, although it's broken up a little bit as well. Joshua Chin, was that a small mistake? It was! Into the grass and into the tarmac. Miguel Vigo will slide on through, taking second place away. Matthew Morhart as well, but how much damage has Joshua Chin taken?
Oh, that was not just a small mistake. That was a big mistake for Josh Chin, and I think that he does have a little bit of damage there. He's definitely going to be suffering in a straight line if that is the case, but I think he did a good job of keeping the car sort of in the wall a little bit, softening the blow as much as he possibly could, but he's going to lose several positions here, all the way down to 6th position as Ryan Otis overtakes the King of Chins here.
Surely he's got top-end damage as well. Left side of the car looks relatively clean, so we'll grab a look at what happened, but might have gotten away with that one. Was there a slowdown for Graham Sanders, or has he just popped back behind Marius Valiokas? Sanders now behind not just Blocker but Kraus as well, and we talk about how important it is not to pick up a slowdown on the opening lap of the race. In effect, this is still the opening lap of the race, and so if Sanders has picked up a slowdown, boy is this going to be painful.
And I do believe it was a slowdown for Saunders there, because he is dropping further and further behind. He's almost in the clutches of Alexander Van de Sant right now, and that's allowing the top 4 to just break away a little bit. And it's Baderfer, Valiokas, Blocker, and Kraus here, and the top 4 are covered by just over 2 seconds.
They're not going to see much of a breakaway, I think, in this LMDH class. It's in the GT3s where we expect that potentially Sean Campbell can get away. Oh, Josh Chin got hooked on the inside curb, and he definitely smacked the wall. The question is it going to really cost him too much time? He gets pushed wide initially by hooking the inside curb a little bit, as he got away with that one as best as he could have hoped for.
We talked about cold tires, didn't we? And I think it just caught out the King of Chins there. I think he just got in there a little too deep, a little bit too hard, and it caused him to just lose the car. As you saw, he overdrove the first one, overdrove the second one, and then he was in the wall for the short straightaway there. And
now he sees in front of him Carlos Villa and Ryan Otis side by side through Indianapolis. Not the shortest point on the track, but it's almost amongst the shortest. Now, slowest point on the track is Arnage, and while they've had no issue working through there, I did hear puff of tire screaming, and it's Trevor Malone, the independent, that will go around and drop to the back. Baderfer, though, is going to lead us to the end of the first green flag lap, but it's not without more drama. Alexander Van de Sant's found the kitty litter.
Yeah, and that's a strange spot to go off there. I wonder if he maybe had a little bit of help there as he rejoins right in front of, I think that was Mike Rasmus that he joined right in front of. Or sorry, that was a recovering Austin Young that he joined in.
No, it was Rasmus. You were right.
So that was a minor heart attack for both of those drivers there. But yeah, that's a strange place to go off. So I definitely want to see a replay of Van de Sant, but I also want to see a replay of what happened to Austin Young, who I might add was able to get back at least 3 positions on that opening lap, because he was all the way down to 15th. He's now back up to 12th.
We'll take a look at what happened to Austin Young, but first I want to see where does Graham Saunders pick up the penalty on the inside curve before he heads in through that second chicane, because it looked initially all right, all things.
No, I think it's on the exit here, Arjuna. I think he just goes a little bit too far on that exit.
That's tough. That's really tough. Here's what happens to Austin Young then, back at turn number 1, and they were almost 3 wide for a moment. Blocker goes defensive. Flynn Lazier's on the inside, and I do think Lazier ends up tagging Austin Young. We'll have to look from up above.
Yeah, the tricky part for Lazier is there were so many drivers moving under braking there that when Blocker came off, he had to let off the brakes just quickly in order to change his lane. You can see Blocker and Young had almost already come together as well. So Blocker moves over to get a clean braking line. Lazier has to move over, and then Young is turning in while Lazier was still trying to get it woed down. So that's a tough one. I'd put it more on Lazier, but it's a little bit of a racing incident for me.
Good call that it was Lazier when we first watched it as well. He is up there in 6th, and surely that will be a penalty for him. That's for Trevor Malone, all loose by himself. And I'm not sure which Twisted Motorsports car that was. I think it was Chase Wilson that took avoiding action. In taking avoiding action, might have made it worse for himself. Alexander Van der Sant finds out that some curbs are not meant to be hit here at Le Mans.
Yeah, that was just too aggressive on the sausage curbs in the Ford chicane here. Can see that the first 2 you don't really have big curves, but he hit a little bit, and then the car was already unsettled from the first 2, and it just was it was a good job for Alexander Van der Sant to stay out of that wall there.
It sounded like a crunch as well. It was not a nice sound that it made. But as we rejoin live pictures, not much has happened in the lap or so that we have just been cycling through some moments on that initial start. 30 minutes about to be complete. Might see some drivers head in probably 10 minutes, 15 minutes from now, given the length of the caution period. But Adam Blocker and Phil Krause, after running in the Lionheart Open Wheel Series yesterday, pick back up in competition. Phil Krause won a 500-mile race at Indianapolis yesterday in an open wheel machine. Not bad.
Not bad, and these two were battling for the final portion of that race as well, with Krause actually leading Blocker and until Blocker made a small mistake and smacked the wall. So it's a little bit of a role reversal here with Blocker and Krause and Blocker being the leader here. Graham Saunders is just sort of hanging on to both of them after that slowdown that he had on the first lap. But I think the big story for me right now is the battle between Bensi and Lazier, because Bensi is actually the first driver who came down pit lane on that long extended caution flag lap. So I'm really intrigued to see what will happen with Bensi, if he will A, be close enough to the leaders if everyone has to do a 2-stop, but B, if he can pull off a 1-stop, he actually has a really good shot at winning this.
So Lazier actually might not be a target to get past. If anything, maybe a draft to kind of use, especially down this long Mulsanne straightaway. 85% of the time around this track is spent at full throttle. That is a remarkable statistic. Graham Saunders is going to look to the inside of Phil Krause. He doesn't really defend into the first of the chicanes down the Mulsanne, and as they jink right then left, Saunders up to 4th as he tries to recover after qualifying. Up there in the 2nd spot. We weren't necessarily thinking that Sean Campbell was going to be challenged, meanwhile, in GT3s, and so it's not a surprise to see him lead from 3 seconds over Miguel Vigo. Matthew Morhart has grabbed 3rd as a result of Josh Chin's mistake, but now they're stacking up behind Christopher Hill in the 101 machine, who just happens to be our BMW Performance Driving School driver profile for today. 4 starts, so not every round this season. 2 of those top 5s, looking like he might add to the total here today. Always good to see that 101 machine running well. He's going to have some potential challenges, not just from the likes of Otis. Chin and Via have swapped around of their own little battle as well. And we're talking about fuel games for the LMDHs, Andrew. If you're a GT3 that has not come down pit lane, given that you've got someone like Chase Wilson who's not too far behind, how concerned would you be about him cycling in front of you through some of these pit windows?
Yeah, I think you definitely have to be concerned in either class if you haven't come down pit lane. You really have to be cognizant of the fact that you've sort of committed to this strategy where you have to go as all out as you possibly can here, just with the way that the timing works. So it'll definitely be something that all of these drivers in sort of this 4th through 8th battle here will be thinking of throughout the course of this race.
85% full throttle is just something that stands out to me, given that I don't think there's many tracks at the world where you actually would come close to that. In terms of road courses, I know if you look at Daytona or Talladega, that's a different story altogether, but 24 hours of running around here, especially before when there were no chicanes that broke up this run down the Mulsanne. It was not an easy stretch. Caleb Bensi through the Porsche curves. That's big drama, and that's one broken M Hybrid V8, I think, although he's out back on track. Has he spun through there and kept it out of the wall? Remarkable.
If he has, he has got to be thanking his lucky stars that he has somehow kept that car intact, as we see Van de Sant coming around Bensi now. But unfortunately, that will put a little bit of his strategy work that he had done so well on. And we do see Bensi coming down pit lane, so there is some damage going on there.
I thought he had kept it out of the wall, but clearly not. Car didn't look too damaged. Oh, it's loose before he even gets in the corner. And yeah, he does hit the left side pretty hard into the wall. Have to figure out what happened further back. Damaged steering potentially as well on that entry into the fast Porsche curves.
Yeah, I think he might have just been a little bit wide on entry. He hit the painted lines and unsettled the car on entry. He caught the first twitch, but it then twitched again, and I think that was what put him off into the kitty litter.
Just ride with Alex Guillaume, because I think he's the car that comes up from behind potentially, and we'll see if that is an unsafe. It's not unsafe rejoin by any means, because it's not like there was much car control for poor. No, it was a different car, it would appear, but did look quite tense for a moment. So Bensi down on pit lane, likely to be done for the day, you'd think. Austin Young has also made his way to the lane, but that seems to be for a scheduled service. He spends just 22 seconds stationary. Saunders now continues his charge back up. Blocker gives him the spot to the inside. He's got a move done through the first chicane now, can tick off the second chicane. Saunders back up to the podium.
I think this is a little bit of strategery from Blocker and Kraus here, letting Saunders lead. First of all, for the fuel mileage that they'll have running behind him, but it'll also allow them to use the long straightaways and draft Saunders. They know that he's just a little bit quicker, so it could help them pull themselves back up into the clutches of Marius Valiokas in that second position there.
You can see that Valiokas has lost beta for, at least in terms of draft. The race clutch machine just trying to hold on as best as possible. Say hello once again over with Joshua Chin, who's made his way down pit lane. This, I think, is basically Chin recognizing that this is the earliest that he could come down pit lane, because again, don't forget that he needs to try and get to the end of the race with just the one more stop. Chin, by the way, back in the purple colors rather than the red. And so slightly different color scheme has not worked out in his favor. Maybe we'll go slightly better at Fuji in a couple of weeks' time. Leaves Christopher Hill, Ryan Otis, Carlos Villa. Now 3 cars embroiled for 4th.
And just a quick note on Chin and the decision from Young as well. I think that in both cases what they're trying to do is get into a little bit of clean air and run on their own, because they were both sort of battling to try and get their way back through the fields after the mistake. Obviously, Young's, it wasn't his own mistake, it was someone else's mistake, but in either case, having the clean air, knowing that they were going to have to stop twice anyways, I think this is what they're trying to do, is just have the clean run. But it's been a nice little battle here. Christopher Hill is finally starting to get maybe just a little bit of space between some of the cars behind him, but at the same time, Ryan Otis is definitely not letting him out of his sights. And I think Otis has just been content to just sort of sit behind Hill, save fuel, see what he can do in terms of fuel mileage, because we heard that the GT3 field was looking at maybe, what did we say, 32, 34 minutes on fuel. So that's pretty close if they can get some really good fuel mileage, maybe get one more lap, and they might actually be able to do it on one stop if you do some fuel saving.
I think it was 8 laps full chat, which works out to about 32-ish minutes, somewhere in and about that range. Phil Krause, by the way, has gotten in front of Adam Blocker, so they swapped around as well. I've got to watch out because Graham Saunders is starting to pull away. Remember that they all have the same setup, so it's not like they are have less downforce maybe than one another. It's just how much speed they're getting from the cars. And I will note that just as we're heading into a potential pit stop window, we're also just on the first range of getting potential lap traffic here. I'm not sure how bad it's going to be for your leader, but it's probably coming this lap.
Yeah, if not at Indianapolis, I would say definitely by the Porsche curves, and the Porsche curves is probably one of the worst places to catch the GT3 field if you're John Badeford, because it's one of the few places on this track where you really have to be careful and pick your battles, make sure that the GT3 field knows that you're coming. So it'll be interesting to see what happens here. I think probably Porsche curves, maybe he'll get lucky and be able to stretch it all the way to the Ford chicane, but it's definitely coming soon.
And so it's going to be the 73 of Joshua Chin that they end up picking up first, if you're curious. Oh, Staropoulos off at Arnage, slowest point on the track, made even slower when you're stationary. Looks like Jimbo Pfeiffer was cutting through the shot there, maybe ran a little bit wide. What happened to a driver that started the season off quite well, but has not had the same level of luck since. Replay will show that he was by himself initially, and it's the curb on the left-hand side that just spins it.
Yeah, and again, you have to be so careful. The balance on these cars, because of how low downforce they are, it's just very easy. If you lock a brake at the same time that you get on a curb, it just goes right around on you.
2.2 seconds still, LMDH leader split by. 7 seconds the margin in the GT3s, where Sean Campbell looks like he is set to go 6 for 6. That is, I think without a shadow of a doubt, a Lionheart record across of all competitions, and it seems like it's a mark that will only stop if Sean Campbell has to miss a race for any reason, which sounds like a very good reason to BOP him out of a race. I think that's still the strategy that I am approving of. Adafer will dive to pit lane because I think he wants no part of traffic, and a very wise call given that Valiokas will stay out for one more lap and might end up losing a bunch of time.
Yeah, I really like this call from Adafer. You know that you have to have 2 stops here, so get one stop out of the way just as you're catching the GT3 field. Really good call from Adafer.
He's the only one that comes in. Meanwhile, by the way, Matthew Morhart has been able to get up in front of Miguel Vigo, but just like we were saying earlier with Otis sticking behind Christopher Hill, I think this is very much a draft game. Synergy Motorsports is number 62, now up to second as Morhart's impressive season continues.
Yeah, Morhart has been doing a real good job here, and I think he's more comfortable on this long Circuit de la Sarthe course than he has been on some of the twistier courses such as Watkins Glen that we saw earlier. He's doing a fantastic job, and he's showing some real pace here.
Is Vigo going to have a look to the inside into the second chicane? Well, he showed his nose at the very least. Showed some intent. With 50 minutes now left to go. Not halfway through just yet. These drivers still yet to come down pit lane. We'll see if they're going to be able to extend as long as they would hope. And as one Hydro Race Geodesic Racing car runs down the Mulsanne, another one works out of pit lane as Adafer stationary for 28.6 seconds, heads back out onto track.
And that's a surprisingly long stop for Adafer, although we do have a slightly different fuel load here. We are with a slightly heavier load, so I guess that could be why it took the 28 seconds getting every bit of fuel. But I would have thought that Adafer, having only really have to go 25 minutes on each stint, would have been able to take maybe a little bit less fuel, but you never know what they're thinking when it comes to in-race strategy. Sometimes you want to go long on one and even shorter on the next one, so maybe that's what's going on.
Yeah, I'm curious. Given that as well, they were able to get 10 minutes saved effectively. That does open up some windows, and they're not having to worry so much about when they come down pit lane. We are into traffic. Saunders looked like he got bottled up a little bit out of Indianapolis as they finish their blast down the Mulsanne. It's going to be a couple more cars that potentially Valiokas get dispatch of on the run in towards the right-hand kink. He's going to catch one of them rather in a dangerous spot, and he's going to send it to the outside. That's maximum commitment. It's also taking the most of what you get, and looked like Staropoli took advantage of that as well to get in front of Jägerlainer.
Yeah, you can see that Valiokas knows that he has to push on this lap. He cannot afford to let this traffic hold him up, and that was maximum commitment for sure.
Sanders not getting too stuck behind through Arnage, fortunately, means that he'll get some clean air on the run up into the Porsche curves, where Valiokas might get stuck behind Lionel Callisto potentially, especially... Oh, no! Maximum commitment once again. Valiokas not all the way to the wall, but bringing plenty of speed through, and Sanders is the one that's going to get checked up behind.
You can see at the start of the lap, Sanders was, I believe, 2.1 or so seconds behind Valiokas. He's now almost 4 seconds. That's the difference that Valiokas's aggression has made.
And both of them going to stay out there, which I guess makes sense, because now that they've committed to being in the traffic, they should go as long as they can until they are absolutely required by the limits of fuel to head off towards the pit lane. But Adam Blocker and Ryan Otis do not think that is necessarily the case. So a couple more cars in both of our classes coming down to the lane. Replay of Clint Martin, who in through Indianapolis, and he's going to lose it by himself and just goes for a bit of a ride on the outside. LMDH car had maybe a similar moment. This is Mike Razmas, who had some more speed, but it's going to be down into Arnage where he has his troubles.
And we've seen this story before, haven't we? He gets on that same curb that the GT3 driver earlier and did almost a mirror spin of that GT3 driver.
Plenty of drama. Phil Kraus on board with him has been allowed to close up to Graham Sanders as a result of all of this. We'll see how that's going to fare out in terms of a potential fight. And while we've been talking about this, by the way, Matthew Morhart has lost out second to Vigo, but more importantly, has lost the draft. Not sure what's gone on here. And that number 62, we were just saying how great he was running. Now 3 seconds off. Something's not right.
Yeah, it could have been a small mistake. All it takes is maybe getting off track a little bit, or you never know, he might be a little bit short on fuel, having to save a little bit to get to wherever he needs to go.
Was it a slowdown, I guess? That's the other thing that it might have been. Because he seemingly picked up the pace. I'm not sure. Right on board.
There was a Valiokas came through. Oh,
he just missed his braking zone.
Yeah.
No, there's no LMDH traffic around. This is the peril of the night sometimes, where you just get sucked in.
Well, and particularly because you're basically looking for brake markers on the side of the track, and if you miss the first one, suddenly you're a full brake marker behind where you should be, and it's very difficult to see what the numbers actually say with the headlights reflecting off of them. So it's a mistake that anyone can make there, but that's definitely going to cost Matthew Morhart.
He's out of draft and closer to Christopher Hill than he is to Vigo now, so Vigo's going to be allowed to run for just a little bit. Say hello once again to Sanders and Kraus as they head once again on lap number 10 down in towards Indianapolis and Arnage. Gaps have closed up between the three at the front once again. Haven't seen if anything has been issued to any drivers in terms of race control decisions so far today. Flynn Lazier was involved in that lap 1 drama with, turn 1 drama with Austin Young. See what Shu would have to say about that one. But on lap 10 of this race, 43 minutes in, when we were expecting these drivers, or rather 43 minutes ago, 47 minutes in, we thought these drivers would only have 30 minutes of fuel. Yes, the safety car helps, but surely not one more lap.
Yeah, you would think that most of these LMDHs at least would have to be coming down pit lane this time by, as we do see our leader, Marius Valiokas, down through the chicanes onto pit lane, and there's the GT3 driver he just overhauled as well. So I think you're going to see a lot of cars coming down pit lane this time by, although one driver is staying out.
Is that Kraus? It is. So Phil Kraus Is he actually trying to do a one-stop? Surely that's not actually quicker. I don't know how much time you'd actually give up having to save, in effect. What, 2 laps? No, it's not going to be 2 laps of fuel. It's going to be way more than that because you're actually doing racing laps.
Yeah, I don't think Kraus is trying to make it, but I do think that he's just trying to get as short a stop as possible, probably doing a no-tire, fuel-only stop on the last last stop. So that would put him, my guess would be with about 10 minutes to go, so he would just need 2 or maybe 3 laps.
Adam Blocker just went 3 wide and almost into the grass as GT3 cars dueled. But that's what traffic really sometimes is all about. He heads through the final corner, and already having come down pit lane, he's going to try and work his way just that little bit more closer to those that he was battling with. It is going to be Valiokas that emerges behind Graham Saunders, 6 seconds behind Graham Saunders as well. Big shake-up through the pit cycle.
Yeah, definitely a bigger gap than I thought would happen, but again, it was Saunders and Beta for really making the right calls and coming down pit lane at the right time to make sure that they didn't get affected by the GT3 traffic, and it's cost Valiokas a fair bit here.
Well, Valiokas and Lazier have gone long, 36.1 seconds basically apiece in terms of in terms of strategy and fuel. Razmas 23 seconds, Beta for 28.7, Saunders 26.9. It's a bit all over the place.
It is, and if I'm not mistaken, Razmas is still on the part of the drivers who came down during the caution, yes. So he is not pitted yet. So really, it's Beta for Saunders and Valiokas. So Beta for and Saunders are going a little bit shorter, probably doing more of a equal stint for these last 2 stints, and I think Valiokas is trying to do the long and then a short one at the end.
So there is again now some strategy with that safety car, it would seem, but as Saunders gets in front of Razmas, whose incident means he is yet to pit. See how that ends up cycling through the strategy. Sean Campbell has come down pit lane, and it's another case where in that class we do have a similar sort of battle going on when it comes to the strategy. Josh Chin is only technically 7 seconds off of the leader, but that does not tell the story in terms of strategy because he only pitted for 12.8 seconds, half the time of the rest of the competitors.
Well, and he came down pit lane much earlier than the rest of the competitors as well, Arjuna. So really what's going on here, obviously we need to wait for Spath and Jimbo Pfeiffer to come down to really see how this shakes out. But you'll recall that Chin was down in 6th or 7th place because of that slowdown penalty that he got on one of the opening laps there. Or sorry, not the slowdown, but the wall contact that he had. So this has put him well clear just by coming down and having all of that fresh track in front of him. And what he probably did was he didn't take tires either.
No, for sure. And I guess, well, given that this is a night race with temperatures relatively low, I would be under the assumption there's not many that would end up taking tires, but that's going to be, I guess, something to track. There's Graham Saunders. Phil Krause has just made his way into the box, and 10 seconds stationary and counting. This is where I guess we will see if Krause is more locked in strategy-wise with the geodesic drivers, or if he's more locked in with the race clutch drivers. Saunders, by the way, big dose of curb through that final chicane. It is going to technically be net Hydro Race Geodesic Racing 1 and 2. Krause beyond 29 seconds. It's only 30.7 though as he rolls away.
Away he goes, but it's going to be at least behind Valiokas as well, I think, as Valiokas comes down. So basically where Krause was, he gained probably 5 seconds on Valiokas through that pit cycle.
Now we get the split call at the end, though, which is really where I think the money's going to be made. The next few passes through traffic are going to be oh so important. And Christopher Hill's been involved in a big one. This is at the end of the lap towards the Porsche curves, and we talked about him as our BMW Performance Driving School driver profile. A one-on-one machine likely heading towards the pit lane.
And Hill had been doing a real good job. We've been documenting how he was holding off the pack of GT3 cars in the middle of that first stint. It does look like that Hill is going to stay out here, so maybe he just had a spin and didn't actually contact anything.
That would be lucky, given how many people seemingly have been unable to get away with such luck from the racing gods. Let's see a couple of different moments that have happened, by the way, in the last couple of laps here, as we'll grab a look at the replays. That's a, whoa, big moment through the entry to the Porsche curves, it would seem, in a GT3 car. Nate Siefker, I believe, in the number 2. Just right on board, Andrew.
And we've seen this before. You just get a little bit loose on entry, you over-rotate the car, and then you're just along for the ride. And Siefker does a real good job to keep it out of the barrier there. And he was fortunate that he didn't have anyone coming through the Porsche curves behind him, because that could have been big as well.
And
oh, that was a big one.
That's how Christopher Hill has his race. Surely when you hit the front end that hard, it's going to do something to a front-engine car. Jim Herrick, now he's very slow all by himself. He's run out of fuel, hasn't he?
Yes, he has. He's run out of fuel.
Happens to everyone, I guess.
And we talked about it right off the top. This is a very, very long lap, so if you miscalculate, it's not like you can just limp it home like some of the shorter laps that we've had. You are basically resigning yourself to having to tow at some point.
And so that was indeed what happened. Jim Herrick, I think, was already a lap down, but he's now going to be 2 laps down. We are 5 minutes away from really being at the point where if you pit, you could make it to the end. And so for Phil Krause, as he comes to the end of his first lap, realistically, he's looking at 2 laps worth of fuel that he needs to put in at the end. So if you're tucked up behind anyone else, surely you want to save some fuel. The problem is you're tucked up behind a driver that maybe put even more fuel in than you. 36.1 seconds stationary for Valiokis.
Yes, but Valiokis, I think Valiokis and Krause should probably come down pit lane at about the same time, and I would suspect both of them are going to go with no tires, fuel only, and go as short as possible on the final stint. So I think probably a 2-lap stint for both of them at the end, maybe 3 at the most.
If you're just joining us, by the way, we had a caution on the opening lap of the race. Meant that we really didn't get a green flag lap in until we were about 25 minutes complete with the race. And so fuel windows are being cycled out somewhat in this BMW Performance Center Grand Prix of Le Mans. And most importantly, if you are just joining us, caution for commercial free to the end of the race. Next 35 minutes, we'll just see that racing action. John Badeford just continues to pull away at the front there, now 4 seconds clear of his teammate Graham Saunders. Valiokis third for Race Clutch. Phil Krause continues to hunt him down for 4th. Championship leader Austin Young got plenty of work to do. He's back in 10th spot in a race where we thought there may be some championship implications. One of the Hydra Race Geodesic Racing contingent looking good. 2 of them rather looking good. 1 not so good. And maybe another one not so good as Miguel Vigo, slow and stationary.
Oh no. That is massive for Vigo, because that's out of 4th position as well. It looks like, is that the Porsche curves again?
I think it's the exit. I can't honestly tell you where this is.
It's definitely not a normal spot that you would pull over. So I'm wondering if he got into the wall, got it straightened back up, tried to drive away, and figured out that it just wasn't drivable there. But that is massive for Miguel Vigo, because again, he was in what, 4th position in GT3?
I think 2nd actually. Well, net 2nd, given that Josh Chin owed us a pit stop. Let's see this. So it looks fine. It looks fine. Oh. Until there's a prototype up the inside, and then it's decidedly not fine.
Yeah, and there's just not much that Miguel Vigo could do there, because, like, if you're the prototype, there's a little bit of hesitation there.
I mean, he's not there.
And yeah, he's just, yeah, it's a tough one, because when you have a little bit of hesitation, that's where things go wrong, and I think that's what we saw there, is just There's a little bit of that hesitation from the GT3, or from the prototype. Miguel Vigo didn't know whether he was going to check up or not, and then suddenly he's there, and Miguel Vigo's into the wall.
Yeah, I mean, hard. It's a helpless situation if you're a GT3. Because if you don't turn in, you're getting a slowdown penalty. I can promise you of that. So Vigo's going to head off towards the pit lane, unfortunately, and might be him done. It's not been an easy season. Someone that we've seen on RaceSpot, so versatile. Aggressive. Swap around for third. Has seen the Synergy Motorsports teammates link up, albeit now with Ryan Otis in front of Matthew Morhart.
And Otis is really starting to come on stronger here as the race goes on, and this is what we sort of seen from Otis. I think he just keeps on getting more and more comfortable the more laps he puts in. So he swapped around with his teammate now. I think Morhart probably got a little bit scared from that slowdown penalty that he got, and I think at this point he's just sort of happy to ride behind his very experienced teammate there and just sort of sit back and learn a little bit here.
And he did actually take more fuel in the pit stop as well, about 4 or 5 seconds more, so he might have the opportunity to be able to try something a little bit different. I saw Flynn Lazier's lost some time, not sure exactly what that was all about, but it comes as Mike Rasmussen has had another off down at Arnage. It's not been an easy day for the 68, but I guess the benefit of racing at Le Mans is he remains on the lead lap at least. Tyler Graf will come into pit lane, and this is important because he is one that can make it to the end from here.
Yes, he can. So this is going to be very telling. I believe he was in 8th position, so I don't think he's going to factor in for the race lead. But both Tyler Graf and Matt Taylor, if they're able to stretch this all the way to the end, which they should again, this should be a nice, tidy top 10 for the both of them.
Important pit stops now to make sure they nail. Let's ride on board with Flynn Lazier and just see what happened to him. You can hear the rear end already sliding before he ends up being able to hang on to that car. I will say, good car control to hang on to it, but those tires, well past their sell-by date now.
And it was the same thing that we've seen a number of times on that entry to the Porsche curves. The car just over-rotates a little bit, but you can see Flynn Lazier, he's an experienced driver both in the sim and in the real world, and that was not only fast hands, but fast feet to keep himself out of the wall there.
Less than 30 minutes to go then here at the Circuit de la Sarthe, looking rearwards over the shoulder of Marius Valiokis, who I think we do have to throw under the bus at this point, Andrew. We're, a third of the way into the season? There's still no race clutch paint on that BMW M Hybrid V8. I know one exists. They've run it in a special event before.
They have it, and I agree. There's no excuse at this point. He needs to get us a race clutch paint there so we can at least know who we're seeing every time he comes on screen. Not that you can really see too much in the nighttime here, Arjuna, but at least when we can see it and when he comes through the light, it would be nice to see some race clutch paint on there.
I'm just saying. I mean, it's a classic paint, red and black. It would be good to have the team represented, not just with a logo on the timing tower, but with the paint as well. But I mean, who will say no to the series sponsors getting a bit more of a shout out? So I guess no complaints there whatsoever. As ever at Le Mans, things do tend to split up slightly. Does not mean there's not battles. We're tracking Valiokis and Kraus. Lazier's on the back of O'Brien after the moment we saw through the Porsche curve for him. Morhart and Otis, we checked in with them earlier. Meanwhile, Chase Wilson has been able to recover his way back up to lead in the AM class in the GT3s, but he's got Carlos Villa in front of him. Brian Bennett not far behind as well. It's impressive to see the way that Chase Wilson continues to fight back, and he'll get to the inside of Villa, who might have got a bit checked up through that first chicane.
Chase Wilson's definitely been on a mission here today ever since that the strategy and the yellows and everything that happened on that first lap put him behind the 8 ball. He's been on the run, but we're riding on board with another driver, Brian Bennett. He was, of course, the driver who was primarily involved in that lap 1 caution. He has been driving up with Chase Wilson, so it's been a very impressive drive from both of those two drivers, and Carlos Villa is quickly getting swamped by both of them.
Yeah, Via's not had a consistent season either by any means. The Hydro Race Geodesic Racing team in the GT3 class having less luck than their GTP counterparts have for the most part. Although maybe Graham Saunders would take objection to my characterization of luck for him. GT3 might have seen another retirement, by the way, because Trevor Malone, loses the rear end through the first sector, and I think says, please no more, Le Mans hurt me enough.
Yeah, at a certain point, once you've spun enough times around here, it's just one of those things where it's like, I'm just going to take a little break here. And you can see, I think, he, again, just carried a little bit too much speed in there. The rear end came around on him. I think the GT3, who do we have here?
I think that's RaceSpotTV again, isn't it? It is. And this time, at least, it's not Arnage.
Oh, that looked like Maison Blanche there.
Exit of Porsche curves. Yeah, I think you're about right. Still not last in class, I'll point out.
No, and that's one of the things that is, if you keep going, you can still get some decent points as well. Speaking of last in class, though, one thing that we didn't mention explicitly is Chris Reagan, who is one of the drivers chasing Chase Wilson. He is out of the race here today, Arjuna, well down the field. So that's going to be a major blow for the points battle for Chris Reagan.
RaceSpotTV has headed back down to pit lane and taken a tow. I think he is another one to have had enough of his trip into the French countryside. Three-way fight continues for fifth. We check back in with that replay. And he just, way too much of the inside was cut. Car got unsettled and does not hit the wall.
Yeah, that was more of a driver issue than a setup issue, unfortunately, for RaceSpotTV there.
That's a great way of putting it. Josh Chin down on pit lane, by the way, and this is where he'll have to have that slightly longer stop now.
Yeah, but I don't think that he's too upset by that, because it definitely put him in the right spot in terms of positioning on this track. It's just a matter of, will he be able to get back to his pace quickly, and will he be able to find some clean air when he comes back on track?
Like Chase Wilson may have gotten mugged on the run out of the final corner, because Via's up to fourth now after Chin disappeared to the lane. Bennett's in fifth, and now Wilson suddenly behind them both. Chin will spend the requisite 24.2 seconds on pit lane and will now make his way back out onto track as Phil Kraus, another one to almost come a crop of an issue through the entry into the Porsche curves. He goes off-roading in a clearly BMW Dakar special, but just about hangs on.
And more importantly, he hasn't let Adam Blocker get too much closer to him. I think he probably lost about a second and a half here, and it's the same thing. You can see there's just that curb on entry. It's upset so many drivers here today. Kraus does a really good job. You can see the car control of the likes of Kraus and Lazier before him, being able to keep the foot in it and not lose very much time there.
So here's where the GTPs start diverging on strategy. Betafer already in the box to be joined by his teammate. And now Valiokas, Kraus, Blocker will head out there for probably 3-4 laps longer, depending on, of course, when they came into the box. And then will cycle their way on through. Both of the geodesic machines do look like they're up on the jacks and taking tires. It's Betafer that squats down now, just waiting for the fuel to complete, and he rolls away.
Yeah, and that doesn't surprise me given how much time is left in this stint. You basically were looking at a 25-26 second stop anyway, so you might as well take those tires and have as fresh as you can, because having the low fuel for so long, the likes of Kraus, Valiokas, and Blocker, it's going to be interesting to see what happens to their times across this stint.
4 seconds at the front between Valiokas and Kraus now after that mistake. Betafer leads his teammate by 4.5 seconds now, with the margin slightly growing, it would seem, despite Betafer actually being slightly slower in the lane itself from cone to cone, but the component of pit stops, that is the entry phase, surely going to be important here. What happened to Creighton Carter? Another driver that's had to avail themselves of the Le Mans towing service, and this is a nasty one, and it's on Tetra Rouge, just looping it on the inside.
I think that was a case of just taking too much of the inside curb there, and he hooked his right front tire on it, and it just spun him right around, and there's a wall right on the inside there. And I think that was right in front of Kraus and Blocker too, so that was probably a little bit more excitement than they were hoping for through that corner, because it's very high commitment in those LMDHs.
I tell you what, this is where Google Translate comes in handy. You spin me right round. We need the French version of that. Tu me fais tourner en rond. Was that close?
Oui.
I mean, you probably speak more French than me at the end of the day.
Un petit peu.
Yeah, despite the fact that I did about 8 years of it.
It helps that we have French immersion up here in Canada.
The proper immersion as well at the end of the day. Traffic again to be a consideration for Valiokas, Kraus, Blocker. See how they contend with it, exactly how they're going to slice, dice, and wheel their way through it. It's going to be a factor that Via, Bennett, and Wilson contend with as well in this fight for 4th in the GT3 class. I do wonder for some of these drivers if they'll think about bailing to pit lane slightly early at any point, given that we've talked about this a bunch, Andrew. If you're running behind another driver, it's very easy to be sucked into this temptation to just hit the marks of the driver in front, even if they're slower than what you could really do. Absolutely.
Because you're almost relying on the car in front of you to set your braking points, because you simply can't see very well, particularly when you have this rather bulbous rear end of the BMW in front of you. It's very difficult to see anything other than the brake lights, so you almost by default have to go around them, or go by them for your markers.
Well, around them counts as well, I guess. Carlos Villa struggles again on tires, it would seem, later into the run. Brian.
Oh, and Chin is around. Sorry. Chin is around in turn 2.
Joshua Chin's run doesn't come to an end. He's probably lost a good 5-6 seconds there, but spins it around and loops it back up to speed. Blocker heads down to pit lane as well, and we will take a look at what happened to the King of Chins and see if it was something worthy of heading off to KFC after this.
I can't see who it is, but it's the GT3 drivers just get there, and wow, that almost looked like a little bit of netcode combined with rear locking on the rears for Chin. That's a really strange sort of spin, isn't it?
I think it's Chris Staples as we go super slow-mo.
But I think Chin had actually lost it by the time Staples got into him. I think Chin lost it on the rumble strip into turn 2 there.
I think the easiest way to do this is going to be right on board and watch. You can't see much of the hands, but it's fine. I think you're right. It's so hard to see, but I think you're right that it's just on the curb once again.
And you're trying to get every possible second that you can if you're Josh Chin there, and trying to negotiate the GT3 competitors as quickly as you possibly can. So when you're pushing that hard, it's just so easy to loop it like you did.
It's down to the final 20. Look at that shot down the Mulsanne as well. You can see the undulation. It's a beautiful sight.
What happened to Bennett here?
Not so beautiful for Bennett, though, as he runs off, I think, at the very end of the straight. Oh, and there's contact with Carlos Villa.
Yeah, that was not him running off. That was definitely some fairly significant contact there. We'll have to see here. It looks like Bennett pulls out to the outside. Villa's defending.
Meanwhile, as this is happening, contact, yes, on the replay, side by side into Indianapolis, and Chase Wilson, the AM Championship leader, for a moment had gotten on through, but Carlos Villa, with the experience of the pro, using the traffic to his advantage, the GTP finally forces a way on through. Valiokas, the leader, has seen enough, but what a battle that was!
And that's cost Valiokas probably a second and a half there, watching those two go at each other. What a move that was from Chase Wilson, and Carlos Villa somehow defends his position there.
Incredible stuff. Incredible stuff being showcased right now between, again, an AM versus a pro. Feels unfair to keep calling Chase Wilson out, but he's got the rest of this year to enjoy his AM's classification, because next year the online campaign and mail-in campaign to ensure that Wilson is promoted to the pros is probably going to be pretty strong. Interesting to note that with Morhart being able to put more fuel into his car than Ryan Otis, the Synergy Motorsports teammates are finally going to be split up as the 95 down to the lane.
And this will be the final stop for Ryan Otis here, and this will be the telling, will he be taking tires as well as fuel, or will it be just fuel only for Ryan Otis? I suspect it'll be fuel only, but we'll see here. Yeah, and doesn't look like he's going up on the jack, so fuel only for Otis. Morehart probably, my guess would be 1, maybe 2 more laps.
12 seconds? 30. Oh, it's a bit long. This is a long stop.
18.3. It's not as long as it could be, but it was still a longer stop, I think, than Otis was hoping for.
And this is where Josh Chin's incident is going to help out Ryan Otis, because without a shadow of a doubt, if Chin doesn't get tangled up with who we believe was Chris Staples, Ryan Otis is behind Joshua Chin, and by a considerable margin. It's going to play out in the favor of Otis by the margin of just 1.1 seconds. It's going to be effectively what I think is going to be the fight for third position, because Matthew Morehart's in a great spot to grab second here at the Circuit de la Sarthe.
Yeah, certainly Chin's chances were definitely helped by all the battling that has been happening with Morehart, with Chase Wilson, with Miguel Vigo, and all of that. So it's definitely helped mitigate some of the mistake that he made there, as we saw Chin giving a little bit of a light flash to Ryan Otis there, letting him know that, hey, I'm still coming for you there, buddy.
Let's go say hello to our race leaders, because we saw Valiocus getting checked up behind that great fight of Carlos Villa and Chase Wilson. And now Phil Kraus down within 1.5 seconds. And Phil Kraus is the one that is probably going to come into box on the very same lap as Valiocus, even though he actually came in slightly later in that first cycle through. These are two drivers that we expect are only going to need 2, 3, maybe 4 laps of fuel at the very most, and so they've got to be very careful not to fight, because it's a lengthy trip down pit lane, and John Bader is only 40 seconds off the race leader.
It's going to be really tight here. I'm not sure that either of these drivers are going to be able to come out in front of Betafor, but Sanders is definitely within range, particularly if they only have to put in a very limited amount of fuel here. So, it's going to be so close here. I think this goes to show, Arjuna, that as much as people like to talk about finding ways to take strategy out of a race, I don't think that there's any way that you can ever take strategy out of the race. You're going to find drivers doing different things all the time, just looking for that little bit of an advantage.
Is Valiocus going to get caught up behind traffic in through the Porsche curves? Just about manages to deal with it in time. Kraus is going to be actually able to get to the inside well in advance, although we'll compromise the exit and we'll lose a couple of tenths of a second just as they work through in towards that pit entry. It will be one more lap for Valiocus. It will not be for Kraus, and this actually is probably ideal. Kraus would not have wanted to follow another car into the lane. This is when it counts, though. Kraus hits the marks.
This is where it all comes down to for Kraus. Let's see what happens, because this will be very telling for Valiocus as well. If Kraus is within 1.5 seconds of Graham Saunders when they come out, I think that we're going to have a race for second place on our hands, because Valiocus will probably have maybe 2 seconds less fuel, and he was 1.5 seconds in front of Kraus. So we're going to see very quickly what's about to happen here.
I think we are going to see John Bader for flyby without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, it's going to be Saunders that's going to be the tail of the tape, I think.
The margin is also where I'm curious, because Bader's pace has been relentless so far. It's been really remarkable how consistent he's been. He flies past. Here's the look at Saunders, though, who is going to get past pit entry. As Kraus, 24 seconds. That's a much longer stop than I expected.
Yeah, so Kraus definitely took tires there. If he was 25 seconds, he felt that he couldn't go another 3 laps on the tires. He needed to get them off the car as quickly as possible. So maybe he was just 1 lap too short in terms of not taking tires there. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Valiocus. Will he decide to not take tires?
Not sure what happened with Chris Staples, by the way, but he was in a world of pain on the exit of the Porsche curves. Let's go say hello to a replay here and just see plenty of traffic. Ryan Otis is coming through as well in the Synergy Motorsports car up the inside. And I think this is while we had one of our AM contenders trying to head off towards pit lane, and this is where Staples has actually lost out about 2 or 3 seconds. Just, it's so easy to lose time, and that's what you've got to be careful of in multi-class races, but don't even need multi-class, it turns out, in that situation. Phil Kraus, 11.7 seconds off the back of the HydroRace Geodesic Racing duo.
Yeah, so the real story there is Kraus had to take tires on that pit stop, so the strategy just didn't work its way out for Phil Kraus here. Question for me now is, does Valiokis take tires or not?
Surely not, but didn't he gamble earlier this season and it didn't work out for him either? Or am I getting mixed up?
I believe that he did try it once earlier this year, but that was in much hotter temperatures and slightly different circumstances as well. So I don't know. If I'm Valiokis, I don't think that he has much to lose by not taking tires. If he's coming down this time by, he should basically have 11 minutes to go, which would be 3 laps at the most.
It's so cold, but I guess the problem is there are high-speed sections like this Porsche curves where you need to be able to trust implicitly that the car is going to stick underneath you. And I guess the other problem is that the setup isn't necessarily tailored to what you want it to be doing in those fast twitch left and right. And so, as we wait to see expectedly the race clutch machine off, it is with a 41-second advantage to the 67 car. Is he going to take tires or not? We're about to find out.
Valiokis was pushing as hard as he possibly could on that pit entry, trying to get every last tenth that he can. You can see down there on the lower half there's John Betafer as Valiokis slowly comes down pit lane. Betafer's working his way through the Porsche curves now into the Corvette curves. Oh, I think Valiokis is definitely, and of course we have the Michelin side, so we can't actually see what happens during this stop.
Hey, our good friends at Michelin, partners of the IMSA Esports Michelin Global Championship, I think he went up 13 seconds and counting. Oh, I don't think it's going to be close enough, but he rolls 17.3 seconds. He's not going to be in the lead. He'll be in front of the second of the HydroRace Geodesic Racing machines. And the margin's only 3.6 seconds with 10 minutes to go.
But crucially, he is in that second position. The question is, will he be able to keep it on those older tires? Because he definitely did not change those tires. But I think it's a gamble worth taking for Valiokis, because it's certainly put him out of reach for Phil Kraus at this point, who is basically 15 seconds back of Valiokis. So the difference between taking tires and not turns out to be 15 seconds.
Flynn Lazier has been thrown into a fight, by the way, with Adam Blocker after they both have finished their cycle of pit stops, so keep an eye out on that one. I did see the note that Brian Bennett has been off the track, and we'll see him get back onto the track, albeit rather gingerly. It started off quite poorly, was looking like it was going to go quite well. For Brian Bennett, unfortunately, LeMans has not been his friend today.
Oh, and I wonder if that contact with Carlos Villa over at the Mulsanne hairpin maybe gave him a little bit of extra damage, and it's causing the handling to go away from him. But this is the closest battle that we have on the circuit right now. It's Adam Blocker and it's Flynn Lazier, and Flynn Lazier just slowly, patiently sort of worked his way up into contact with Adam Blocker, and he's now putting the number 74 under an enormous amount of pressure.
Blocker fresh off a trip to the Circuit de la Sarthe, where he met up with a handful of his Powerslide teammates, Henry Bennett and Brian Carey, Lionheart Staples amongst them included. But 2 tenths separating them down the Mulsanne. Watching on can only prepare you so much for actually having to throw up the defense. Let's go back to second in the GT3s, because after Ryan Otis got through the moment with Chris Staples, cost him some time, Joshua Chin has joined the scene, and this is now again the fight for second spot, effectively the the GT 3.5 class behind Sean Campbell.
And how often have we seen this battle as well, Arjuna? Ryan Otis and Josh Chin laid on in a race, doing slightly different strategies, but somehow ending up basically in the same position, race after race, as we see a prototype starting to negotiate that as well. I believe that might have been your leader, John Betafer.
It's one of the HydroRace cars, that's for sure. Haven't talked much about KFC today, which is a surprise, Andrew. Me, LeMans, I mean, I got to talk a bit about KFC.
Absolutely we do.
There was a move going on between Adam Blocker and Flynn Lazier. Got very confused by the graphics showing us that, but the screen was not. Turns out, hashtag blame Arjuna. Lazier gets on through, and I don't think he took tires, so maybe we do get a sense that tires aren't the be-all and end-all if you have been managing them in the early stages.
Yeah, certainly Adam Blocker's tires don't look very happy right now, whether he just doesn't have enough heat in them quite yet in the run. But Flynn Lazier, whatever he's done to that car, it's certainly looking very racy right now.
Yeah, and talk about racy. Say hello to Chase Wilson, involved in the lap 1, turn 1 drama. Now 4th overall. The AM Championship leader proves why he's leading the points, gets back in front of Carlos Villa.
But we've seen this before with Carlos Villa and Chase Wilson. This is far from over as they come down towards Indianapolis again. Hopefully we won't have another heart and mouth moment.
We might, though, because here's Josh Chin on Ryan Otis. In towards Indianapolis they go. Otis will give up the ghost for the time being. No traffic to make it even more fun for us. But again, remember, these two split by, what was it, 2 points in our GT3 standings coming into this. They are very, very closely matched, and that traffic might help split them up a little bit. Might be traffic that ends up deciding what it is today.
And that, I believe, was Graham Saunders coming through there. So we definitely have the sharp end of the LMDH field is negotiating the sharp end of the GT3 field right now. So yeah, this is definitely a good battle. I think right now Chin just has slightly the upper hand on Ryan Otis in terms of speed here today. But we've seen this battle go off time and time again. So I doubt that this is the last time this season that we're going to watch these two battle in the closing stages of a race.
I hope not. And they're two drivers that have pretty good racecraft as well. So you get the sense that they no matter where we go, we have some pretty tight confines coming up in the next second half of the season. It'll be interesting to see how they'll do battle. All the while, I'll point out, 30 seconds behind Sean Campbell, who, not sure if he is still in our YouTube chat, but he might as well be saying hello to us, given how easy these races seem to be for him.
Yeah, it's been a walk in the park here for Sean Campbell for sure. I do think that as we get into some of the different tracks, there's going to be a little bit more in terms of competition for Campbell. I'm particularly interested to see what happens at the close confines of Canadian Tire Motorsport Park or Mosport up in Canada, because the quick laps, the short laps, the narrow confines, and LMDH's weaving in and out of GT3 cars, I think is going to create a little bit of chaos, and anything can happen at a track like that.
Absolutely. I do like the fact that we're going there as well, and we're going to the old school version, not the new school, where they've got the much bigger runoff areas. I'm definitely not a fan of that. Chris Staples would like some runoff area, though, as we're about to find out, because down at Indianapolis, there's this wall on the outside, Andrew, that's quite vicious. Chris Staples found out the hard way.
And you can see that is such a hard impact for Chris Staples, but you can see that he basically got on the brakes before he had properly rebalanced the car. You have to be full commit on the right hand and then quickly straighten out the car before you get on the brakes. It was just, the car was still rotating as he hit the brakes, and it just rotated him right into the wall.
Riding over the shoulder of Sean Campbell. For the first time, by the way, this BMW M4 GT3 uses the Fanatec official podium, M4 GT3 steering wheel. There was a team that had one of the wheels have a power failure during the Watkins Glen 6 hours in the real world, Andrew, which means in real motorsports they now have to deal with the same stuff that we do in sim racing. Ignore the fact that they've dealt with that in real motorsport for quite a while anyway.
I was going to say slowly but surely the real world is catching up to the sim world.
Yeah, very true. I love the crossover, though. Just need to see if BMW won't give me a car with my logo on the side of it? Will they give me a wheel with my logo on it? I think that's what we're going to have to find out at some point. 3 minutes left in this race, which means that as John Baderfer heads onto the Mulsanne and down to that first chicane once again, it will be for the penultimate time. Yes, we had a lot of caution running at the start, but it's going to be 23 laps that get complete by the time we see the checkered flag.
And it looks right now, assuming that he doesn't make a mistake, it looks like Valiokas's strategy call is going to work out well for him.
Josh Chin, not sure what's happened,
no.
but Josh Chin is back in pit lane. The fight with Ryan Otis was going so well, but Chin's day comes to a close.
And once again, Josh has made a small mistake, and all that good work that he had, all for naught.
It's what, the 4th different GT3 machine we've had an issue with down here. Right over the shoulder, and you'll just see he was loose before he even got to the apex of Indianapolis itself, and Ryan Otis slides on through.
Very similar to what we saw with Chris Staples. I think he just got a little bit too wide on the entry in there, clipped that little green curb there, and just spears into that outside wall, and just heartbreak for Josh Chin.
That's going to help Otis in that quest for second in the championship. It also helps Chase Wilson because he's now 3rd overall. An AM driver on the overall podium. Let's not forget again, points combined for Pro and AMs in terms of you are classified together and score points together. Championship scored separately. Another great day for Chase Wilson.
And let's not forget that at the beginning of the race, we didn't think that this would be possible. He was caught up in that first lap, first corner incident, and he looked like he was going to be behind the 8 ball, but it's been just a clinic of a drive for Chase Wilson. I would argue driver of the day, potentially.
We should probably do a driver of the day at some point. I don't disagree with you on that one. I think other notable shout-outs should go to Staropoli because he got mixed up in that initial incident as well. He's plus 17 into the top 5. I think it's shown that you can be resilient in this series, and it's been good to see that people mixed up in that initial caution able to fight on through. Logan Spath, another one. 11 places gained. He's 23rd in the overall positions, but he's 10th in the GT3 class.
And sometimes you just need to have consistent lap times and be able to keep the cars on, all 4 tires on the tarmac. We've seen that a number of drivers have struggled with it today, but Spath has done a good job of doing that.
So, time is about to expire, and John Baderfer is on to what will be the final lap of the race. Of note, margin is closed between him and Valiokis. It's 2.4 seconds. That splits first and second. Graham Sanders has had a bit of an issue. He's lost a bunch of ground through the opening chicane. It's come down to the final 2 left standing at the front.
Yeah, I think Sanders was just trying to get everything that he possibly could to get up to Valiokis. Made a small mistake there, and it's cost him a shot. But Valiokis is within shouting distance. I don't think that he's going to have quite enough time. I think he's still just out of drafting range, and it's just not going to be enough unless you get a mistake from Baderfer. But we've seen that the car can get loose at any point in time here. We could see something happen, so Valiokis is definitely still well positioned here. This race is not over.
We are pretty much set, though, that we will see a 4th different winner this season. Young's got 2, Sanders got 2. Kraus has the sole victory so far. Baderfer and Valiokis have been waiting patiently, crucially for the Hydro Race Geodesic Racing number 67 clears a bit of that GT3 traffic on that entry into the second chicane. Will be able to spool up the hybrid power through the Mulsanne for the very final time. Valiokis got a pretty good run out of the corner as well. 7th and 8th is fighting. That's Sivka and Hill. And so that's a GT3 fight that they will very much be keeping an eye out on. And it comes as I think Graham Sanders underfueled his car. Phil Kraus has just gotten absolutely past him for 3rd position.
I think you're right. I think Sanders thought that there was going to be one fewer laps than it turned out to be. So Sanders is having to save massive amounts of fuel. I think he might even be at risk for Lazier and Blocker as well. So disaster for Sanders on this final lap. Meanwhile, Bettifer has made it by the battle from the GT3 field and has put him in between Valiokas, and I think that this is going to put paid to any chance Valiokas had here.
He tried to be clever with it, but now he's going to get trapped on the outside trying to go around the GT3 machine at Arnage. The GT3 car's got to be very careful. It's a big lumbering boat of inertia. They're able to get on through, but that margin now grows to 4 seconds. Traffic gives and it takes away. It's given to John Bettifer on this very final lap of the race. And what a race it has been. A long-awaited trip into Le Mans. The first time that Lionheart has landed at the Circuit de la Sarthe. We were hoping for an interesting strategy battle. Well, lap 1 put paid to any chance of that initially until the split calls end up being quite intriguing. John Bettifer rode through all of that though. Pole position, sat through 25 minutes of yellow flag running to emerge on the other side. A winner in the Lionheart Butt Kicker Sports Car Championship. Another win for the Hydra Race Geodesic Racing team. It's John Bettifer, the 4th different winner in this GTP class. Valiokas will grab second. Another valiant effort for him to be able to work his way up towards the very front of the field. It'll be a long while before we see Sean Campbell cross the line in the GT3 Pro class, and an even longer time before we get to say Chase Wilson and winner overall podium.
Yeah, but what can you say about John Bettifer? What a drive it was for that number 67 car, and it was a necessary drive, you might say, after there was a little bit of an interesting race last time out at COTA for Bettifer, a scruffy race you could say, but this race today, it was perfect for him.
It was a nice little bounce back, that is for sure. Of note, Adam Blocker got quite close to Flynn Lazier on the run to the line courtesy of traffic, but did not swing in his direction. If you're curious how long it's going to take before we can grab you race results, there's the track map showing you where everyone is at on track. Alexander Van der Sant's going to be the next one to come across the line. A top 10 in points just about. Another top 10 in the books for a driver that had done no practice before today. So I think he's going to be quite impressed with his own performance to be able to survive 90 minutes here at the Circuit de la Sarthe.
Yeah, and that, whether you're doing a 24-hour race here or whether you're doing just a 90-minute race, survival is key here at Circuit de la Sarthe. Austin Young, another driver who merely had to survive there. I think he probably had some fairly significant damage as he crosses the line. And then the number 99 of David Sirois. It's been a quiet race for Sirois. We haven't talked about him, but he's just another driver who brought it home in one piece.
And now it's a long, long wait before we get the next car to come across the line. That will be Sean Campbell in the GT3 car. And it will be, as he brushes up against the wall in the very final lap of the race. He's definitely not holding back as he runs his way to the checkered flag. Will be a 6th consecutive victory for Sean Campbell in this WMP Racing number 26. He was expected to be the title favorite coming into the season, but boy, is this Lionheart history being set. 2021, we talked about a run in the Lionheart Open Wheel Series where Adam Blocker finished in the top 5 every time he went out there. 2022, Phil Kraus inside of the podium spots. Sean Campbell has been undefeated so far, and the streak continues here. The BMW Performance Center Grand Prix of Le Mans. It's going to be a 40-second wait before we get to say hello to Ryan Otis, second in class. Takeaways, Andrew, that you kind of have as we get these final couple of cars across the line, and I do think Carlos Villa has run out of fuel, and so will drop to 6th come the final results. First time in Le Mans, what will you think the next time we hopefully get to come back here?
Well, first of all, I think that no matter whether you're doing a 24-hour race or a 90-minute race, Le Mans is just a special place in these types of cars. It produces just the perfect style of racing. You have mixes of speed and skill. It's treacherous in parts. It's got strategy. No matter what what the caution throws your way. So I think that this is definitely something that we have to do again next year, and I can't wait for it to happen.
Hopefully with less drama on the opening lap. Staropoli, 18 positions gained, will cross the line in 4th position. Matthew Morhart will scavenge a 5th position, despite very much showing plenty of speed across of the course of the day, and that will be all of the cars across the line after 38 took to the green flag. Not all of them, unfortunately, will see the checkered. We'll grab a look at our butt kicker race results. John Badefer, win number 1 in this butt kicker sports car series. It's 4 seconds, the margin of victory over Marius Valiokas. Phil Kraus 3rd. We'll grab another podium in the private label team hype machine to back up the victory that he has already been able to add to the collection at Watkins Glen. Flynn Lazier grabs 4th, just in front of Adam Blocker. Both of whom get in front of Graham Sanders, who runs out of fuel on the final lap of the race. Big margin back to Michael O'Brien in 7th. Alex van der Sant, Austin Young, championship leader coming into this one. Going to be an interesting championship complexion on the other side. David Silra completes your top 10 for the Synergy Lavoie Motorsports camp, while the second Synergy Lavoie entry down in 11th. Tyler Graf scored as 12th. Final car on the lead lap is Matt Taylor, while Razmas and Bensi DNFs on the day, 8 and 16 laps down respectively. In the GT3s, again, another victory for Sean Campbell, but in a swarm of pros that flood the top 10, it's Chase Wilson that stands out, your AM winner and 3rd overall in this GT3 class. Ryan Otis does grab 2nd after Josh Chin comes unstuck. Staropoli able to climb to 4th. Morhart drops to 5th with Christopher Hill, Nate Siefker, Andrew Marquez, Carlos Villa, and then Logan Spath through the top 10, with Carlos Villa dropping behind a couple more cars, given that he ran out of fuel. Jägerlehner, Pfeiffer, and then Chin, 11th, 12th, and 13th in the combined GT3 classifications before 2nd in AM, Creighton Carter. That's going to be a big point swing the way of Chase Wilson. Bennett Staples, who is 3rd in AM, by the way. Then Callisto, Forsyth, Herrick, and Vigo will make up the rest of the top 20 as we begin to get in towards the used car lot. Big drama for some, including Trevor Malone, Chris Reagan, as well as Clint Martin. And so, with that said, I believe we can make our way in towards some post-race coverage and in towards the Butt Kicker post-race show. It's win number 1 for John Badefer, and put it on pole position and was able to set the tone right there. John, what was going through your mind as you were heading down the Mulsanne after a clean race start, and the yellow flag comes out and suddenly you're slowing things down?
Yeah, it was a new thing for us, I think, this season. But my first thought was, where do I start for the restart? And then from there, it was just trying to save fuel and keep the battery charged. Let's
go to that restart, because it looked like a lot of your competitors thought you were going to go, and they got stacked up for a moment there. Any concerns on that restart? That was going to be a feisty run in towards turn number 1.
Well, I thought the green would. I was told to go on green, and I thought the green would pop sooner, and it didn't. So I was just waiting for that, and then I went. But yeah, I saw a couple people got a pretty good jump, and I was just hoping they didn't, outbrake themselves, and I was just trying to make it through clean, and I was able to do that.
Well, you and the Hydro Race Geodesic Racing team have been pretty consistent so far, and with Austin's unfortunate issues today, I think you will take the mark and the mantle as the most consistent driver this season. What's come together in this BMW M Hybrid V8 that's finally seen you in HyperX victory lane?
Well, it's been a little bit of up and down. I had some decent runs, and then some other incidents that I wish I could have had back, but overall, yeah, it's just been trying to stay consistent and not make mistakes. And today, I think that was it. I don't know if I was the fastest guy or not, but I just tried to hit at the right time, avoid traffic, and hopefully come out with the victory.
Well, a second pole position of the season, this time converted to victory. Congratulations, John, and I'll see you in Fuji in a couple of weeks' time.
Sounds good. Thank you, guys.
John Badefer, victorious in the LMDH class, victorious in the GT3 class, and by 42 seconds was Sean Campbell. Sean, you were chatting with us during that caution period. How did that change the way that you were thinking about the race, and I guess in particular thinking about the strategy?
Well, at first I thought it was going to be, I didn't think before the caution that it'd be fuel saving, but after the caution I thought it'd be really close, but it turns out it was not. I think we were 4 laps short of having to pit, or not pit, so I don't think you could have saved that. but I guess it was just drive. It was just raw drive.
And I guess at a track like this, you were always trying to break the draft as early as possible. Did you ever have some concerns about this round that you're going to be unable to break the draft, given 85% of the lap here is full throttle?
I did, yeah. I thought that it was all down to the first sector before Tete Rouge, I mean, because if you can't break it by then you're stuck for life, I guess. But I was overjoyed when I saw something happen behind me.
You've done your fair share of racing at Le Mans, I'm sure. Have you ever had to deal with safety cars around Le Mans?
I don't. Oh yeah, no. One time in AHU.
Oh yes.
The restart did not go well for me. I got taken out.
I don't remember you being taken out, but I remember watching that restart. So commiserations for that, Sean. Congratulations on a 6th victory this season. We'll see at Fuji if it can continue. 7 victories on the bounce.
Hopefully.
Sean Campbell, winner in that GT3 Pro class. But for the first time this season, we get to chat with our GT3 AM winner, Chase Wilson, who, after being involved in the caution on the opening corner of the race, I don't think you were necessarily expecting to be on the overall podium. Talk us through that one from your perspective. Unfortunately, I don't think Chase Wilson has a copy with us, so we'll see if we can dial him up for future round. In the interim, let's chat with Marius Valiokis, who tried a little bit of a contra strategy, but it was not to be today, it turned out, Marius.
Yeah, no, yeah, I definitely went for the alternative. I knew when we were coming up the traffic, I made the call, just do opposite of what John was going to do and kind of see what happened. Didn't play out in traffic a little bit. I think there was a few places where I lost, just quite too many seconds. But yeah, because I knew it was just the only way you can get lap times is on low fuel, so I had to try that out.
Well, it's another good run, all things considered, in a championship that continues to be quite close. The question that everyone, I guess, is now asking is, when are we going to get an actual race clutch paint on your car?
It's a conversation I have with the managers probably before every race. I am still working on it. We've got the pit ready. It's just getting everybody's approval for it and sign off, and then yeah, we'll have it ready for you guys.
Hey, well, if you keep getting podiums, I can keep asking you every week, and you can keep sending it to the management. So at least we're trying here. Congratulations on the 2nd, Marius. Can't wait to see you out at Fuji.
Thank you, guys. Have a good one.
Well, at least we asked him the question, and hopefully those approvals will come through, and we'll get the chance to take a look at what is a rather fetching BMW M Hybrid decked out in the race clutch colors. That's our post-race interviews done for today, but we head over to the Gomez Sim Industries Grand Prix of Fuji on July 10th. Same time, same place, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, here live on RaceSpotTV. And Andrew, we had a 2-mile run, effectively, through the Mulsanne today. Fuji's also got quite a long straight, but then what's on either side of that very, very different?
Absolutely. You almost couldn't get a more opposite circuit to Le Mans from Fuji. And it's going to be very interesting to see how these drivers adapt to it. Obviously, Le Mans was sort of the one that all the drivers had sort of circled on their calendars, but then you have to quickly refocus because Le Mans happens so early in the season. It's got to be sort of anyone who had a bad day here today is going to have to really quickly turn it around and turn into a really strong performance in Fuji.
And of course, that middle sector going to be quite interesting with that multi-class traffic. Quick look again at that next level racing schedule, because first half of the season is winding down pretty rapidly. Come August the 7th, we will be done with 9 races, just 9 left to go. And most sports going to be interesting. We've talked about that a little bit today, Andrew, but I think Monza's the one where turn 1, lap 1, we saw a caution here today. Monza's synonymous with drama at the very start of a race.
What are you talking about? There's never been a problem at any race at turn 1 and on any level. I don't know what you mean.
Absolutely not. You're not expecting any sort of drama, are you, Andrew?
No.
You're not inviting it, are you?
No, definitely not putting a commentator's curse on it.
Yeah, and some people don't believe in the commentator's curses, but I will leave that with you. Boy, what fun that we had, though, at the very first trip for Lionheart competition to the Circuit de la Sarthe. Hopefully, it will not be the last time that we do this, and that in 2024 we can return and hopefully go caution-free, because boy, was the strategy interesting with a caution. Imagine what it could have been without it. Don't forget, Lionheart competition rolls on this Thursday, the second Triple Crown for the Lionheart Retro Series. We make our way to Speedway, Indiana for the Butt Kicker Indy 250. Join us again, 10 p.m. Eastern and 7 p.m. Pacific. We'll make our way to the land of the rising sun to roll on for the first half of this Butt Kicker Sports Car Series. But in 3 of our classes, 3 wildly different stories. One, nutty, with the LMDHs continuing to bring the fire. Meanwhile, in the GT3 class, both in the Pro and in the Am, we are seeing runaways at the front. Chase Wilson as well as Sean Campbell seem to be impossible to beat. We'll see you next time on RaceSpotTV, but for now, for Andrew Kinsella and for myself, Arjuna Kankipati, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time for more great Lionheart Racing Series competition. Until then, so long and goodbye.